Before I get started, I figured I should admit that this is the first keynote speech I have ever given. So I was thinking about it, and I figured, as educators, it is your job to give me feedback on how I'm doing. So I was also warned that by this point in the conference, you would have an even shorter attention span than your students. So your job is to snap, clap, hoot, holler, whatever you need to do at any point in the presentation when you see something you agree with, when something's going well. Just keep it loud and keep the person next to you awake. So with that, let's get started. All right, so I figure I'll start at the beginning. So at the end of my freshman year in high school, I was on a robotics team, and my mentor came to me with this idea for a remote control to control the robots we had been building. And so he pulled me aside, and we started sketching out on a whiteboard what this might look like. And so this was my first look at the product, or rather the process that would change everything. So from there, I dragged a couple more students in, and soon we had our first prototype. And so we took this prototype to the World Championship Robotics competition to see if people were actually interested in what we were making and if they'd be willing to pay us money for it. And so we sat down, we started figuring out how we're going to market this, and so I came up with our infamous slogan, which we promptly put up on every wall and bathroom door we could find. But that was the easy part. The hard part came when I had to actually talk to people. So I was a very shy freshman, and I had no intention of going against my parents' advice and talking to strangers. But my robotics mentor handed me our stack of business cards and handed me our prototype, and he walked me up to the nearest team and then walked away. And so that's how I learned to give an elevator pitch, not from some corporate training session, but from having to do it over and over and over again. But we got some incredible feedback. The teams wished they had come up with this idea. They wanted to know where they could get it and how much they could pay for it. And so from there, we came back home and we started continuing to prototype the device, working on the hardware, working on the software, as well as a little more marketing collateral. And so in that spirit, over that summer, we worked on our very own commercial, which I unfortunately scripted, acted in, and edited. And so we have that for you for your viewing pleasure. So if we could dim the lights.
Test driving your FTC bot with your PC and Robot C can be scary, especially when your team is waiting on you.
Is it connected yet?
No, I can't get Robot C to work properly.
Did you? Oh, you forgot to turn Bluetooth on?
Alright, it's trying.
I hate connecting to Bluetooth. I wish there was a better way.
The PC and Robot C are great for writing programs for your bot, but they're really hard to use for testing and driving. Connecting with Bluetooth is a pain.
Alright, it's connected. Here we go.
Alright,
Out to the field.
I got the bot.
Is trying to test your bot crashing your PC?
Guys, we have to hurry up. Our next match is in 10 minutes.
We have to test autonomous.
Well, then let's just test it. Oh, we forgot about the wafer start. We don't have time for this.
I know. My laptop's out of battery, so get your laptop.
Got it. It doesn't have Robot C.
Is connecting with Robot C slowing you down?
And so from there, we would go on for a good 90 seconds about all of the features of our wonderful device. So let's get a round of applause for that commercial. All right, and so after that, we got all sorts of orders, potentially not from the commercial, but all sorts of orders nonetheless. And so we would manufacture the devices in my dining room here, and then we would go to robotics competitions, steal a table, put up our banner, and flag down everyone we could find, telling about this device we had created. And soon we had more orders than we could handle. And so we set up an assembly line of student volunteers back at our high school. And by the end of it, we had processed over 150 orders. We shipped ChapRs all across the world, even giving out every fourth ChapR to a team in need who applied for one. And so somewhere in the midst of all of this, we realized we needed to take a step back and take a little field trip. So this is my high school in Austin, Texas. This is Westlake High School. And so we still couldn't drive at that point. So my mentor had to come and pick us up. And then we drove downtown to this intimidating building of marble floors and, more importantly, free chocolates. And so we're wandering around, and we finally find the office of Josh Tucker, our patent attorney. And so we sit down in this meeting with him, and we're talking with him about what we, as the inventors of this device, want protected under our potentially new US patent. And so as a 15-year-old high school student, that was a pretty nice feeling. And so we continued working with him over the course of a year to develop our patent application. And then the following year, we actually received US patent 9043031. And that was pretty exciting. At the age of 16, I became the lead inventor on this patent, and we would do interviews with local newspapers, and it was great. But it never really sunk in until I stopped for a second, and I thought about it, and I realized that that's one more patent than my dad has. And he's, to this day, filing with his company to try to keep up. So that's when it really hit me. And so with that, I will give you a quick demonstration of the device itself. So the idea is that, as you saw in the commercial, normally you would have to have a whole laptop to set up everything. But here we have everything that fits in our handy little briefcase, which my mentor was kind enough to make us at the very beginning. And so this robot here is just a demonstration of one of the robots we can work with. But, okay, sorry, it's already paired. It goes a little faster than I sometimes anticipate. So as you saw, it just paired. All of that process with the little waiting screen and all of that, it just did it automatically before I was ready for it to do that. And so you see here, I can just start the program and then plug in a joystick. And then we are able to work just like that. And so as exciting as that is, it does work with other robots that we could not bring for you here today. This is the only one TSA let us bring all the way from Austin, Texas. So we have some videos here of the other robots we can work with. So this one here is Orion. Our little guy here is BiddyBot. And so you can see it's the same process where I've got the ChapR in my hand, I turned it on, it's pre-paired, and there you go, the light's solid, and I hit the button and off it goes. And so you can see in the next video, the ChapR is actually in my pocket. It's designed to be as portable as possible, and I can drive around, do wheelies, whatever I feel like. And so there's the ChapR. And so we have it here working today, but you have to remember that all of that this device on the right just started from this little whiteboard drawing on the left. And so it had been this incredible process, this year-long experience of developing every buzzword skill you can imagine of marketing and manufacturing and managing, and all of these things had just come from this little whiteboard idea. And so that idea of whiteboard to reality is something that not many people experience. I realized that I had this opportunity kind of as a fluke. I happened to know a guy. This mentor I had gave me this opportunity, but not many people get that. And so it was from that I decided my goal and my responsibility was to give other high school students that opportunity. And so from there, I founded Chap Research. And so Chap Research is a nonprofit organization within my high school to give other students these kind of opportunities so that they can learn these kind of skills. But that being said, I had no idea what I was doing. It was starting all over just like we would with any of our projects. And so the first step was to commandeer a storage closet and to insist that everyone call it the Chap Research office. And this is actually what it looked like. We have a time lapse of us trying to clean the place. And then from there, we brought in our first round of students, got our polos, and tried to fit them all into the Chap Research office. But again, we had to take a step back because we didn't even know what it was about the ChapR experience that had made it so valuable. And so we sat down and we started thinking about it. And so the first thing we came up with was that idea of student ownership. That since I had come into the process so early, I felt really committed to what we were making, and it was that drove me up there to talk to all those people when I wanted to be anywhere else at the time. And a lot of that came because we had the freedom to guide the project however we saw fit, even if that meant making mistakes, even if that meant making a somewhat low-quality commercial. We could have brought someone in to help us, but it was ours, and that's what mattered. And finally, by the end of the project, we were starting to get all of this amazing outside feedback. And so it's one thing to hear it from your mentor, from your mom, from your dad, but when you make something and you see someone hold it in their hand and try to hand you a check and tell you that they want 3 of them, that's when you realize you're doing something very valuable and the skills you're learning are very, very applicable. And so from that, we thought we knew what we were doing. And so we got all our students together and we started brainstorming all these projects, throwing them up on a whiteboard and narrowing them down to the ones we thought we were going to be doing. But again, as we were about to send these students out, we realized we didn't really know how to get them started. And so we stopped and we realized that a lot of these students were used to starting from something, that all of a sudden, starting from nothing, they didn't know where to go. And so that's something we began to call the blank page problem. And that's because in a high school setting, they've got their Google Maps. They know how to get from point A to point B. It tells you when to turn left, when to turn right. But all of a sudden, when they have nothing, it's hard to know where you're going or even who to go to for help. And so we realized that because we had gone through that ChapR experience, that was the only reason we weren't afraid of this. And so that meant that this idea of project-based learning became a very important part of Chap Research as we balanced how to guide students versus how to let them tackle these problems on their own. And so that's something we've built into every project we've done. And so, for example, we have one project where a student came to us wanting to design 3D printed sprockets. So those things that fit in the chain on your bike that you normally have to get in metal and in a limited variety of options, he wanted to make that fully customizable and available to anyone with a 3D printer. And so we sat down with him, brought in some other students, and started trying to figure out how it would be used, what it would do, how much it would cost to make it. And soon we were drawing out all the equations that would make this a reality and going through the programming of it until we had our very first look at what one of these sprockets would look like. And so it took about 8 months, but finally we had this final product. And so a user can go in, enter in what they would like, fine-tune their parameters, take a look at the file, and then from there they can download it, and you get a file that will work on any 3D printer. And so there you have it. But of course, I sort of said 8 months and then it was done, but it was not nearly that simple. Somewhere in this process, we moved past those initial milestones, because at first it was, oh look, we have our first look at the sprocket, and then we had our first 3D printed sprocket, and then we had our first 3D printed sprocket that worked. But then toward the end of the project, as you're working on your user interface and you're ironing out all those bugs, those milestones are fewer and fewer between, and you realize that it's very hard to stay motivated on such a long-term project. And so we realized that these students in this team setting were used to something from a high school setting, and that was where every student had some small role, but if something went wrong, the teacher could step in, and the project wouldn't last more than a couple of weeks. And so we realized that what they weren't used to working with was a company structure where you have someone telling you what you should be doing, but you also have people reporting to you. And so that's something we tried to implement within Chap Research. And so when you take this company framework and you put students in that framework at every step of the way, something incredible happens. So for example, we have our oversight committee. And those are several adults within our district who help oversee the continuity of the program as well as its overall direction. And they work with our student CEO to make sure that Chap Research is running smoothly. And so our CEO then oversees the day-to-day operations as well as works with our senior staff and our project leads to manage each of the projects. And then finally, we have the individual contributors who work on these projects, come to the meetings, and of course attend our mandatory Chap Research parties. Yes, hooray for the Chap Research parties. And so yes, Priya's on there a couple times. And so from that, again, we ran into a problem. And that was that these students represented a huge variety of skills that they had learned through their projects and that they would be graduating very quickly. And so these 3 students, these 3 seniors represented all of our knowledge on coding, electronics, and 3D modeling, and all of a sudden they would be gone. And so we had to come up with a way to keep these skills within the program. And so we came up with this idea of a model of student teaching. And so as the CEO at the time, it was my job to try this out. And so I had learned all of these skills in programming throughout the process. So my seminar would be on Linux and web development. And so I sat down and I started making all of my slides. And so by the end of it, I had 143 slides. It was going to be this epic 3-part seminar. And I had 5 different handouts that were going to fill in all the little blanks. It was going to be great. So after this, I had this misconstrued notion that I actually knew what I was doing. And so I did all the marketing. I got all the students in the room. And I got up in front of them and asked my first question. I was like, all right, guys, what is the internet? And it was just dead silent. And so you've all been there. They were giving me nothing. And so in that moment, I realized that maybe I didn't know what I was doing. And I realized that for all my slides, for all my handouts, it didn't matter if I wasn't able to connect with my audience. And that's something you never realize as the one being taught or the one sitting behind the desk, but as you all know, is essential to any kind of communication. And so that's why student teaching became such an important part of what Chap Research is. And so we've gone on to have a variety of seminars since. And every student is required to teach something they've learned as part of being in the Chap Research program. And so from that, we had all our realizations. We had that idea of project-based learning, the company framework, and of course, the student teaching. And so those 3 things then became the cornerstones of what Chap Research was as a program. And so again, we have that project-based learning, the peer teaching, the company dynamics, and of course, innovation. And so we've been running for only about 2 years now, and we have a whole variety of projects. So if you see the numbers there, we've got 1 patent, 3 papers, 13 projects, 10 students, and 5 alumni. So we've come a long way. But while I can stand up here and tell you all the numbers, I figured it'd be much more exciting if I showed you our very first mini documentary of the program. So you guys are the first people to ever see it. So like I said with that feedback, we'd all love to hear what you think.
Hi, I'm Rachel Gardner. I'm the founder of Chap Research. Chap Research is an innovation program to try to add to the experience students get in a high school setting. The program teaches a lot of skills like programming and research and things like that, but a lot of the skills that they wouldn't normally be getting are things like teamwork or pitching to companies or working in a management framework the way they would in a company. Chap Research really got started kind of out of random chance. My mentor on my robotics team came to me with this idea for a remote control to control the robots we had been building. And so I signed up not knowing what I was getting myself into. And a year later, we had a patent and over 150 of the devices sold.
Hi, I'm Ria Agarwal. I'm the current CEO of Chap Research, and I'm currently working on the project DeltaBot. A lot of us didn't really know what the program was. We knew it was the thing that got us the ChapR, and that would let us drive our robots around, and it was a great invention. We didn't really realize it was more than that it was projects, that it was deadlines, that there was management.
My name's Eric Rothfuss. I'm the chief mentor for Chap Research and the founding mentor for Chap Research. In school, what they do is by the numbers. You do this, and you get your grade. Everything works just great. But what happens when it's not prescribed? What happens when you don't know what the outcome is supposed to be?
But with Chap Research, your deadlines are self-made. You're working with your team, and it's a lot more personal and less about, oh, I need to get this certain number and then I'm successful.
Many things happen. And one of the most interesting things that happen is that you start to rely upon yourself to set those goals, to set those milestones, but further to envision what the end goal is. That's the magic right there. Our motto in Chap Research is from whiteboard to reality. And every one of our projects have started out on the whiteboard with a drawing, with a set of words, with bullets. From there it goes to paper, it goes to team, and then it goes to reality.
Student teaching is a great way to learn new concepts. It's great to learn it from the teacher, from the curriculum, from the website, but students know how to teach others in the most understandable way. They know all of the issues they encountered, all the things that aren't obvious.
I'm actually going to be giving a test to one of my team members for sudo permissions, which allows you to access everything on the server.
Teaching has really made me understand the material a lot better.
When you're teaching yourself, you're like, well, I can send them a little bit, let them try it a bit, and I'm still here to help them out.
If you throw in with that the ability to work in a management infrastructure, put in that as well, giving back to the other students, making it possible for you to take your learnings and give those to others. You build a whole wealth of skills that you wouldn't have otherwise learned.
I think one of the reasons we've been able to be so successful is because we are able to partner with industry on a lot of the projects we're doing. And that helps us keep on the cutting edge of what's going on because we're able to communicate with people in academia about the latest research, or on another hand, we're bringing in mentors from companies in the area who are able to bring in expertise that maybe our teachers don't have.
I think the most important aspect is the experience. That's the reason I think businesses want you to have had a job beforehand.
To make something like Chap Research a reality, funding is an absolute necessity. But finding that money isn't easy.
When it came time to fundraise for the program, we got a couple students together and we actually had the opportunity to work with a local venture capitalist to put together our slide deck and figure out how we were going to present it. And it was from that we actually got our first $5,000 grant for the program.
Being a mentor for Chap Research is one of the most amazing experiences I've had in my life. And working with a set of high school kids that can perform as well as almost any startup that I've been a part of is simply amazing.
Before I came into Chap Research, I knew absolutely nothing about computer science, computer development, or just frankly anything with programming. And after joining Chroma and participating with my team members and my peers and working with another student mentor, and I'm just constantly improving. I couldn't have done that without Chap Research.
There was a whole other side to it that we didn't really experience or know about until later on when you're in the program. You're like, wow, these are skills I don't know how I live without.
I remember coming into this not wanting to talk to anyone, not knowing the first thing about programming. I remember Coach Eric forcing me up there to market about the ChapR. And now I'm speaking at education conferences and I'm heading off to Stanford. So I don't know what I would be without it necessarily.
Thank you. So you saw at the end there, I got a little teary-eyed. That's because as we sat down to do this, the interviewer actually asked, what does Chap Research mean to you? And it kind of hit me all at once. So I realized just how much this program has made me who I am today in so many ways. I mean, the fact that I can stand up here and say that I had a patent before I could vote, or that I've been starting companies longer than I've been doing my own laundry. And that this came about, this whole process from when I was a freshman in high school to now as a freshman in college, I would not be who I am if it weren't for that. And so while my parents may tell me that it's because I'm special or something like that, I know that that's not the case. I know that any student given this kind of opportunity can achieve this kind of success. And so with that being said, I feel like it's not only my goal, but my responsibility to make that a reality. And so that's why we're here today reaching out to you all, because we were able to make this happen, even though none of us have taught a day in our life. And so we think that you guys, the educators, are the ones to help make this a reality at high schools across the world. So it's an ongoing conversation, and by no means do we think that we are the answer. We want your voice in this as we work together to change the face of innovation education. Thank you. You're amazing. Thank you.